Welcome back.
Welcome
to another episode of Startup Tales.
Yes.
With Felicia and Ty.
So, today we're going to be talking about investors.
And pitching investors. And
networking.
why it's not even a big deal. Yeah,
it's
networking.
Really
why it's not a big deal. So, let me start.
Yeah.
Before CollegeHive even existed, I had an app called Be in the Know. This was before I even knew how to code. So I had an app made and I wanted the app to be successful and have more iterations, which takes more money that I didn't have. So I reached out to all these investors on LinkedIn and I set up all these meetings in Richmond. I've probably met with like 5 different Richmond investors. And I remember vividly like planning out my business plan, going to these meetings, like caring about what I was wearing. These are just people who I met on LinkedIn.
Right.
I go there and it's a conversation. They're looking at my business plan. One investor hit on me.
Wow.
You knew about that.
I didn't.
Yes, you did, babe.
I did?
Yes.
Well, I forgot.
Anyway, I just remember thinking it was such a big deal. And now it's 3 years later, 4 years later, and my mentality and my outlook on investors is just completely different. Over the past couple of months, Ty and I have been becoming really seasoned in the practice of being a venture capitalist or being an investor. We've been listening to VC podcasts,
right,
watching a lot of VCs talk about their day-to-day and what they do, and we've been learning a lot about that business,
right,
which has given us a different perspective in relationship to our business. So the whole idea that you can reach out to someone and then actually come out of it hoping that they want to invest in you, it's ridiculous. Because there are so many investors that you honestly, you want to get to know them. You don't want someone to invest just because they're an investor.
Wow. You can't be out there.
She wants to be a star all the time.
Continue.
All right. You can't want someone to invest just because they're an investor. You can't hope that someone will invest in your company just because they're an investor. There are so many investors out there. And you're giving away a piece of your company. And when someone invests in you, you're committing to them being a part of your life for years and years at a time. So it behooves you to actually pick an investor that you give a shit about.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I mean, you pretty much nailed it. I really think that,
like, the glorified idea of we're gonna meet with a investor and we hope they invest. It's like, you don't even know this guy. This is just a guy, first of all. This is a guy with money, okay?
Right.
And there are plenty guys with money. Right. And there are girls with money. And there are dogs with money.
Sure.
Like, you can't just want anyone with money to be a part of your life and your company and your baby for 5 to 10 years.
And it's if you are wanting that, it's just a reflection of how new you are.
Yeah.
And when we were that way, we were really new. We just, wanted the money so we can keep pushing and not even thinking about the investor, how we would vibe for the next 5 years, But yeah, it's, I think it's like what I learned is treat everyone like a human first.
Right.
And go from there.
Yeah. So, like, in learning about the VC world, it's enabled us to be able to relax, right? Enable us to realize that just because we find out that someone's an investor doesn't mean that we want them to invest.
Yeah, it doesn't.
It's like, hold on, let's figure out what kind of person you are first. So with that being said, we were inspired to talk about this because we just went to a networking event in our area, and it went really well. Like, we were really social, we were really relaxed, we talked to a lot of people, we made a lot of good contacts, we talked about our idea, we got great feedback.
Right.
It was just an amazing time. And one of the things that happened that night was that we actually ended up pitching an investor. So we were just going to talk about our experience during that.
Yeah, so basically, we went there, we kind of already had an idea because, you know, we've been to a few networking events, like where a whole bunch of entrepreneurs and investors, they all get together and we are all in this venue and it's socially awkward. And
I used to hate it. I used to hate networking events with a passion. Part of me still does.
Right.
Because it's just like this forced place.
Exactly.
At least that's how I used to think of it. I used to think of it like everyone's here trying to get something. And why is that? Because that's why I was there.
Right.
Right? But now, our purpose in going in was really just to be successful at talking about our business. Like, we weren't actually looking for investors. We weren't actually looking for connections. We don't need anybody for anything at this point. So we just wanted to make sure that we could properly describe our business.
Exactly. So what we did was I came up with a question that was obviously related to the event. And the question was, what are the main insights you've had this year being an investor or an entrepreneur? So we would go around and ask everyone. We'd literally just interrupt them, whoever they're talking to. By the way, you can do that at a networking event. It is totally fine.
Yeah.
You would think like, oh no, I shouldn't do that because they're talking.
You have to do that.
You have to do it. You just have to interrupt, and
it's playing offense.
Most people are nice.
Yeah,
so they'll
most
let
people are
you
great.
in.
Right.
They'll let you in.
Some
so
people
just
aren't.
interrupt them.
Most people are.
Yeah, but we never got
some
turned
people
down
are
that
weird.
night.
Some people are weird though.
Sure, but every time we did it, it never happened. So we went up to every group basically, and we asked that question, and we let them talk about their own journey, about what they're doing. And there was a lot of good insights. Some of them were cliche, some of them were specific, some were, really good.
But what that question enabled us to do was two things. One, it enabled us to go up to someone, right? Which is kind of like offense, which is like we're being the aggressors, right? We're coming into their space. But we're asking them a question about themselves.
Right.
So it's like you don't want to come up to someone, aggression, and then start talking about yourself. That's like double aggression. So if you're going to interrupt someone,
Exactly.
It's nice to interrupt and ask them a question about themselves.
That's genius.
Yeah.
I knew that subconsciously. I did not see that like
Yeah,
that.
it's great.
That was great.
It's great. Not only that, so that's one thing, was that it was the perfect way to interrupt someone.
Mm-hmm.
It was just the perfect balance of interrupting, but it's not so bad. It's not a bad interruption because you're interrupting me and asking me to talk about myself. So like that's
Right.
not how it's perceived in the other person's mind. That's
Right.
one. The second reason why that was great is because it also created this environment in which they would open up about who they are. Are they an investor? Are they an entrepreneur? We would find this out within the first 30 seconds of their answer.
Right.
So
And
this
some
whole
were. They might have been marketers. They might
yeah,
have
this
been
this
whatever.
whole dance of am I talking to an investor? Am I talking to an entrepreneur? Like we didn't play that. We don't play that dance. We didn't
It didn't matter.
dance that dance. Because it was right in the question. So there was a time in which someone actually said, well, I am an investor. And then they gave their answer. And then they knew that we were entrepreneurs, obviously, because we had said we're entrepreneurs before we asked the question. And then they asked us about our business.
Right.
So I wouldn't even say we pitched them.
It's
We
not a
just
pitch.
told them about
We
our
were just
business.
talking
We
at
were
that
just
time.
talking.
It's not a, and that's the whole thing
That's the
about
whole
looking
thing.
at them as humans.
Yeah.
Like you're just having a conversation, It's not like a thing. I'm sure it is if it's like demo day at a cohort or something like that.
Right.
That's different, but in a networking setting, it's literally just talking to another individual.
It's just talking.
Right.
That's
and it's not a big deal. And I know I used to make it a big deal, and when I did make it a big deal, I stutter and then I make shit way fucking complicated, and it's just not good.
And there's no point, because you might not even actually like the investor that you're talking to.
Right.
Right? So
you don't even know if it's a big deal yet. Like if it's you don't even know if it's something that you want to be involved with.
Like, it's like when you're first starting out, you think that if you're talking to an investor, you want them to invest. But then once you learn more about it, you realize like, oh, actually, there are probably going to be situations in which they want to invest, but I don't want them.
Right.
And it's just knowing that and sinking into that self-awareness, you know, and also having that self-authority and that self-love.
Right.
Knowing that your company deserves a certain type of investor. Your company, you deserve to only work with a certain kind of investor. Just because they have money, that's not actually the foundation here.
Right.
In most instances, it'd probably be better to continue bootstrapping and deny an investment if that investor is an asshole.
Well, and if that investment is only predicated on money, like that's the only value you're getting from your investor, like it'd be better to just bootstrap.
Exactly. So we were
potentially
right. So we were talking to this investor. We said our idea properly. It was good, and that was all I was looking for.
Right.
We were talking, and I was looking for his questions to reflect that he understood what we were saying.
Right.
So we got what we wanted.
Right.
And that was it.
That was it. And then a couple of days later, we shot an email to everyone else that we met that gave us their card, and we just said, hey, it was great meeting you. I'm sure we'll bump into you sometime in the future.
But the investor wasn't one of them.
Nope.
Because we didn't feel like he would have been a good fit.
Right.
Like, we didn't even ask him for his card.
We didn't.
So it's all about what are you looking to get out of going to these networking events, and what are you looking to get out of talking to investors, and realizing that investors are just people. So just because someone's an investor doesn't mean that you want them in your life for 5 to 10 years. So it's about understanding the business that they're in as well.
Right. And I would say drop all expectations.
Yeah.
And have fun with the process.
At the end of the day, this is about people connecting with people. Right. You know, like this is about, do they like me? Do I like them? Is this mutual?
Right.
Because there were some people we met, and before they answered our question, in my mind, I was like, oh my gosh, I hope they're an investor.
Right, exactly.
Because that would be so dope if this person that we're talking to is an investor.
Because we vibe so great.
Because we vibed with them.
Yeah.
So that's really what it's about. It's about catching the vibe.
So what's your main takeaway, I guess?
My main takeaway would be investors are just people. And there are tons of people in the world. There's a lot of investors in the world. So there's no point of valuing investors over another person. And there's no point of looking for every investor to invest money in you. You should be looking for friends. And if your friends happen to be investors, that's great.
Exactly.
That's what you're looking for.
And the best way to do that is obviously by being yourself, but our best way of doing that is we asked literally everyone a question that we wanted to be asked, actually. And that's how you can find out and connect with other people. So we asked, what are your main insights this year being an investor or an entrepreneur? And, that's something that we would love to be asked. So if someone else loves to be asked that question, we would connect instantly.
And based on their answer, we would understand, we would be able to learn more about the way that they're thinking as well, based on their answer.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because there are some people who we asked who they deflected.
Oh yeah, they completely, and it might have been my fault because I might have been a little too aggressive. And coming
Right.
straight up and not breaking, but just interrupting whatever it is that they had going on. I might have been a little too aggressive. But that's something that we learned. Like, we actually don't do networking events very much. So that's something that we learned and we
Yeah, we
pivoted.
do actually. We do it like two times a month. 2-3 times.
I guess. I guess I didn't see that as a lot. But yeah, that's something that we learned. Like, okay, like since I was being aggressive, Felicia, spun it in a particular way. She just adjusted to make it more at ease for those that we were talking to.
And my point was that some people deflected the question.
Yes.
And so that said a lot about them.
Absolutely. I'm like, wait, bro, we're not even asking you anything. We're not asking you to pitch. We're not asking for you to listen to us. We're asking you, what have you learned? What's your insight? What advice do you have?
Deflects that question.
Holy shit.
It's just like even if you are an investor.
Yeah.
That's a first impression, and I'm thinking you're not even listening to me.
You're not
right now, and you're not able to think on your feet.
And how they deflected was like, oh well, you got to talk to blah 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 blah. I'm like, but for what? For an insight that you've had? I'm asking you. I don't need an investment. I'm not asking for that. I'm just asking, what is your journey then like? Oh, you got to talk to that person. Like, wow. All right. And they're doing you a favor if they do that.
Right.
Thank you. It's not about prying shit out of people. It's about saying, oh, really? Okay. All right, great. Well, I'm Ty. Your name? Okay, great. I'm sure I'll see you around.
And it's not about trying to change people.
Not at all.
People who are a certain type of way, let them be that way. I know no one can change me.
Right.
So the idea is try to meet people who compliment you, right? They don't have to believe what you believe. They don't have to think in the way that you think. But find people who compliment you, right? And if they happen to be investors, that's a good situation.
Right.
But you shouldn't be looking for investors and then trying to make, that investor, I kind of wish they were this way. I kind of wish they were that way, but they have money, so I'm just going to put up with it for 10 years? That's insane. So I think it all comes down to self-love. And when I say self-love, I mean specifically like company love. How much do you love your company? How much do you love what you're doing? What are you willing to sacrifice? You're really willing to sacrifice a whole board seat? No. Get out there and meet more people. It's a numbers game. So that's my main takeaway.
Nice. Well, there you have it.
Until next time.
Peace.